Hello and welcome to Top Secret TV, the show that is non-allergenic and biodegradable. In fact, some viewers are writing in to report extreme physical effects from watching this show. These effects vary from an intense nirvana type state right through to body cleansing, opening up the sluices at both ends effects. And I might say, and I think I speak for all of us here at TSTV, that I'm so very proud that our show is evoking such strong reactions in you, the viewer. And you know why? It's because we love you. Big show for you tonight, ladies and gentlemen, full of excitement, adventure, paradigm-shifting revelations, and very important announcements. If you want to catch this show, it'll be airing on Channel 9 in about 4 minutes. But if you stay with us, we've got animal acupuncture, the Hilton centrifugal engine, and much more. But first, as we do every week, let's visit a while with those dazzling divulgers of dire and delightful dialogue, those crazy curators of curious copy, the fabulous Mark and Carla with Between the Lines.
Welcome to Between the Lines. First of all, this week we've got a story on the computer giant IBM. The computer giant has just unveiled technology that does away with credit cards and personal identification numbers by using the human body to transmit information. A person carries a small transmitter containing data that can send information with the touch of a finger. Called the PAN, or Personal Area Network, which carries an electrical field that passes through the body on which data is carried. Public phones and telemachines equipped with PAN sensors would be able to identify a user and deduct charges just by being touched. And you thought it was just science fiction, or is it today?
This is incredible, isn't it? I mean, is this one step off the microchip implant, something under the skin? Who knows?
I'm not sure. It's indeed a step in that direction, isn't it?
Let's look at the next story. Call for ban on genetic foods. Australians may already be eating genetically altered foods imported from the United States, even though the federal government has not yet set up a regulatory body to assess their safety. The Australian government's proposed draft standards to regulate this type of food is not expected to be in place until the end of the year. The soy products with both the genetically altered and natural beans include bread, ice cream, biscuits, and some manufactured fried foods. It would seem that the import company, and apparently no government authority, has any idea how much of the product is coming in or where it will actually end up. The American company Monsanto, which makes and owns the gene technology, as well as a weed killer called Roundup, doesn't believe there is a problem. The genetically altered soy product adheres to the Australian food and safety standards. But the opponents claim, among other things, that genetically altered foods will lead to the development of superweeds resistant to all types of pesticide. And did I mention that the company which owns the product, which could cause the weed problem, also produces the weed killer? Surely a coincidence? But don't get too worried, because the plan is that soon most foods will contain genetically altered materials. In fact, I think they're planning that within the next couple of years most of our staple foods will contain these type of products.
A lot of these issues have come up in the European Union standards, I think, and it's going to become more current in Australia as science
Definitely
goes
something
on.
we have to address straight away.
Yes. Okay. History comes to life. History teacher Adrian Targett comes from Kings of Wessex Community School in England. He has brought history to life with the discovery that he is not only a direct descendant of the oldest known skeleton, the Cheddar Man, but he is also living within 700 metres of where the 9,000-year-old Stone Age hunter-gatherer lived. Oxford University's Institute of Molecular Medicine did DNA tests of the bones and of the skeleton that checked the result against samples from pupils and staff at the school for a television documentary on archaeology. Just as a side point, how old do the creationists believe the world is?
That's a good question, isn't it? How old do they believe
I
it
don't
is?
think anybody knows, to tell you the truth.
I'm not quite sure. Well, what's the next story? Red Cross guns wrought. Now, Australian Exposure magazine runs a very interesting article about a British branch of the Red Cross, the international humanitarian organisation, which is set up to help victims of war. Now, this organisation also seems to own shares in major arms companies. Doesn't make sense. The Red Cross was listed amongst others, not only dozens of British charities, but also the Church of England. Between these groups, they own some hundreds of millions of shares in the international arms trade. I mean, you're giving your money to a charity, you would think it was for victims of war, not actually to create victims of war.
No, I don't think many people would think that a church in this day and age would be involved in war. We know years ago they were involved in politics and war, but these days we hope that they would have evolved beyond that
I
point.
would hope so.
But back to our own politics. Open up our X-Files. Federal MP, Labor backbencher, Ricky Johnson has recently called on the government to unlock its top-secret X-Files on UFOs after a rise in sightings over her local area. She is asked how much the government knows about those pesky aliens, which we all know don't exist. It will be interesting to see if Miss Ricky Johnson actually gets any feedback. I think we should give her a call and actually see if she gets any feedback.
Good luck, I really hope she does. Good luck, Mrs. Johnson.
Yes, indeed.
Now, cancer, listen to this one. Cancer goes up in smoke. A study has found that the humble salad vegetable, the watercress, helps prevent lung cancer. A daily portion of the green stuff turns one of the 4 major cancer-causing agents in tobacco smoke into human waste. Professor Mark Wildquist, who is head of a medicine department and a leading nutritionist, said that the watercress was included with green tea and soy products, and this mixture was proven to help prevent lung, breast and bowel cancer. So you'd be eating your watercress in your salad tonight?
So a salad and a ciggy?
Oh, that'll be the next thing. Packet of
Indeed.
cigarettes and your watercress. Well, that's all we have time for this evening, but we'll be back next week with plenty more stories. Until then, see you later.
Good night.
Thanks, guys. Our first story tonight is about animal acupuncture. Top Secret wanted to know how and why it actually works on animals more effectively than humans. Ray Stark recently spoke with Dr. Carl Muller from the Paran Veterinary Hospital about the discipline of animal acupuncture.
It works by release of chemicals from the central nervous system. We place a needle into an acupuncture point and the message travels along the spinal cord to the base of the brain, the hypothalamus, and there's various neurochemicals released, and they have an effect both locally where the needle's placed and in general throughout the whole body. Does it work? Well, we tend to find results around about the 75% mark for most conditions. Now obviously not everything will respond, but in general terms it's as effective as surgery or medical treatment. We use acupuncture for an enormous variety of problems, virtually anything, behavioural problems, skin disorders.
Behavioural problems? What sort of behavioural problems?
A recent one was a show ring shyness in a show. It was a Maltese. It was a show dog, and it misbehaved when it went into the show ring. It would be very timid and cower and not walk around the ring. And we ended up giving it acupuncture gold bead implants. Anaesthetic was given to the dog, and small beads were placed in the acupuncture points, and the dog resumed his show career and did well. But we use it for things like respiratory problems that may not be responding, things like feline asthma, may not respond necessarily to cortisone, or chronic joint problems, arthritis, soreness.
Does it help with the arthritis? That really helps them?
Yeah, especially in cases where the animal's perhaps too old for normal medications, and or it gets side effects from anti-inflammatories.
What about acupuncture of goldfish?
No, haven't done anything, no. There is certainly acupuncture done on birds.
Yeah.
Both wild birds and the caged birds, and on koalas and other native animals.
What about some of the remarkable animals that you've helped?
I think the most dramatic was a dog that had epilepsy and was not responding to the anticonvulsant drugs, and we gave it a 10-week course and gradually weaned it off the medication, and it stopped having seizures. Into the second week it stopped having seizures and has been okay for something like 7 or 8 years, free of medicine and free of fits.
What does the animal feel when you give it acupuncture? Does it feel anything?
Yes, they. First of all, they don't really feel a painful response. They generally look a little bit sort of surprised if we get the same sort of reaction as people get to acupuncture, which is a full sensation, a bit like a local anaesthetic, or a little bit like a tiny electric shock. So it's an altered feeling.
They know it's going into them?
Yes, I think they can feel the needling sensation, but it's not painful. The needles are very fine gauge, and we're not injecting anything in. But there's a definite strange response, more a sort of a bemused or this is a different feeling type response. Some dogs that are uncooperative, we just muzzle or get the owner to restrain them. We don't use anaesthetics or sedatives. And most animals are comfortable with the feeling after the first treatment. I've treated cats with acupuncture and they've tolerated very well. Right, Poppy's a Cocker Spaniel, a youngster. She's hurt her neck jumping down some steps, I think, and landing awkwardly. So she saw, in general, just around the cervical, around the neck area, down to her shoulder blades.
Turn her around a bit.
And she's not too happy about having her neck moved, so very stiff there. So we're going to place some needles in the sore area as well as some ones on her feet to relieve the pain and spasm.
So animals respond better than humans with acupuncture, is that correct?
No, not necessarily. They don't have what's called a placebo effect. They don't get better because they think they're getting treated. So there's a lack of the psychological component.
Well, that's an advantage, isn't it?
Well, it is in a sense, because if we get a direct effect, an improvement, well then it's a true acupuncture effect.
And do they, for the same condition for a particular animal or dog, for example, do some dogs react faster and slower than other ones? Is it really to do with their temperament?
No, not to do with their temperament. It's more to do with how recent the problem is. If it's an acute onset, if it's just happened recently, then it's more likely to respond quickly. If it's a long-standing, say an arthritic hip joint that's been there for ages, then it's going to take longer to get a response.
How long do you leave these needles in for?
Generally 15 to 20 minutes, and we try and see, well, she's going to be seen twice in a week, and then we'll see how she goes. She should be pretty good after that. But if it's a long-standing problem, we'd see her on a weekly basis until we got an improvement, generally within 3 or 4 weeks.
But is it accompanied with the general practice, which is prescriptions, I guess?
Well, I try to just use acupuncture on its own as a stand-only modality, and we tend to use it when conventional medicine or surgery isn't doing the job.
Do some of the customers prefer straight acupuncture than, say, with
A lot of
drugs?
people refer to me after they've had diagnosis and treatment from other clinics, and if things aren't going as they'd hoped, then we try the acupuncture.
So it's another resort.
Yes. Yeah.
Right.
Some of my colleagues, though, do combine treatments. They may perhaps inject an antibiotic or vitamin or whatever into a particular acupuncture point to try and get the sort of the double effect.
And with Poppy here, how long has she been in here for? What do you expect her condition to be?
She's only been sore for a day or two, and so we expect her to respond very quickly to this and hopefully be all right within 3 or 4 days, and generally by the time she's had a second treatment.
I should react to that one.
Yes, yeah, that's where the sore spot is, just there.
She's more relaxed now.
Yes, we find most animals after the first treatment tend to be more at ease, and some of them even go to sleep, but they're generally more relaxed.
Is there an increase of amount of vets being aware and getting into the alternatives?
Yes, I think there's 100 members of the Australian Veterinary Acupuncture Association, whereas 10 years ago there's only half a dozen of us that were actually interested or performing acupuncture.
It's fantastic to see complementary medicine move into wider acceptance. All it asks is a fair go, and the community seems to be giving it one. Our next story tonight is perhaps the most important story we've ever broadcast. It's about the Hilton centrifugal engine. This engine uses 3 forces working in harmony to drive a radical new petrol engine, which delivers above 90% efficiency, compared with about 30% in the standard internal combustion engine. I spoke with Barry Hilton at length about this invention. Here are just a few minutes of his amazing story. I'm speaking here with Barry Hilton, inventor of the Hilton centrifugal engine. G'day, Barry.
G'day, how are you, David?
I'm very well, thank you. Can you tell us a little bit about the engine?
Yes, I certainly can. The engine is basically a rotating system compared to a conventional engine. The basic engine consists of a dynamic flywheel block A and fitted with 2 diametrically opposed pistons B, operating within a common cylinder, bored through the block at 90 degrees to the shaft and with the combustion chamber at the heart of the system between the pistons. The pistons have rollers C mounted on gudgeon pins, which are designed to ride on the inside face of a stationary elliptical fixed cam D. First of all, we have combustion. That throws the pistons out, which against the side of the cam here that has a springboard effect to rotate the block and all the mechanism there. When it reaches this particular point, all of the energy that are in those pistons centrifugally has been transmitted via these rollers at 90 degrees to that motion, so as it goes in rotation rather than an outward force applicable to centrifugal force here. Then, of course, because there's no tension on these pistons whatsoever, they are guided in again from this side without the usual effects of that occur in a centrifugal pump, whereby torque at the shaft tends to push these pistons through the side of the block. In this particular engine, there is no tension, there is no extra energy being fed into this system at this point. So consequently, these pistons are at no tension on the side here as they come back into top dead centre. The actual combustion is occurring right at top dead centre.
Ah, I see.
The top dead centre span is far wider than it is in a conventional engine because we're not going over the top of the sine wave curve.
Right.
We're keeping the piston completely at top dead centre during the entire term of the burn, and that's why we get no output from the exhaust, because it is combusting the fuel 100%.
Right.
By far the most outstanding characteristic of this engine is that the entire cycle is based on an integrated simple harmonic operating in harmony with the laws of motion and displacing the pistons in a centrifugal elliptical orbit. As a consequence of this, the shock of piston reversal is completely eliminated. As you saw from the when we were actually firing the engine over, we had no visible sign of any exhaust here. There was no smoke coming out at all. This is a 2-stroke engine, by the way, and it should be pouring out of there. But it's not coming out of there at all. There's actually no visible exhaust other than this fine spray that you can see just along the edge here and down the back here. Can you see that spray? Right, what that spray is, because this is a 2-stroke engine, and inside is included the oil, which is 50-to-1 ratio with it, like any other conventional 2-stroke engine. The actual oil in this engine doesn't even burn. what it does is move through the cycle. The petrol itself completely burns and turns into water, and these are little globules of water surrounded by a little casing of oil, the oil that hasn't burnt, and that's all you get out of this engine. It's just the output of water, carbon dioxide of course, which you can't see, and they're in a ratio of approximately 6 to 7. So in those combinations, going into the atmosphere is not harmful at all. The engine functions exactly the same. Under load, it drives the wheels at a very fast speed. The speed of those engines is slightly slower than the engine itself. The RPM of that engine is around about 3,000 RPM, even as inefficient as the two-stroke cycle is. So it's capable of providing the same output powers that any conventional is. Conventional engine is, but does it in a much more efficient way.
Is it, because it seems to be a fairly simplified engine and seems to be quite forgiving, would it actually be easier to service?
Oh yes, far easier to service. Well, the only thing that puts it together are these bolts around the outside here. You can see them there from the model behind you. But as you can see here, it consists basically there of a central part which forms a cam around which the engine operates. Right. 2 bits of casing, 2 outer bits of casing that go on the outside, and the block in the middle, and they're 2 pistons. That's the entire components that go to that engine.
There you go, I couldn't do that with an exhaust pipe. And what about here? Oh, that's cool. That's actually not even hot.
Yeah, that's only that far from your output of your engine, where you've got about 1800 degrees occurring in there. You've got about 40 degrees over ambient temperature occurring there.
Which means
is
what?
Just hot enough to touch.
Yeah. Whereas this, if you put your hand on an engine block, a normal engine block, I wouldn't be able to take my hand off again. It would be fused to it. And this is cool. It's quite extraordinary.
As you saw, a most interesting engine. We'll keep you posted on future developments. Next up, we have the latest UFO sightings in our new segment, UFO Update.
Welcome to UFO Roundup. These reports are from a website run by Messagenin Productions and the National 24-Hour UFO Hotline. And the National UFO Hotline wish to hear from eyewitnesses of UFO associated events. You can call Ross Dow on phone number 190-224-3529. Most of the events which have been reported recently, between the 2nd and the 6th of April, in Wanguri, near the city of Darwin, in the Northern Territory, Sydney, Campbelltown, New South Wales, Mount Owsley, and the town of Nowra, New South Wales, Umea, Central Coast, New South Wales, and over Beechinor, 192 kilometres north of Hobart, Tasmania. The reports all seem to include 1. An electrical field, 2. Up to 12 illuminations passing overhead, 3. A large RAAF type aircraft with attached disc following the same course and direction, 4. A large or heavy duty helicopter combs the area with searchlights, 5. A light aircraft also combing the area with lights. The RAAF advises that they had not recorded any aircraft in the areas where UFOs were spotted. However, the Navy at Jarvis Bay is currently in a joint exercise with American naval forces. The reports include the UFO was described as very red colour and it had a small fiery rim. It was heading south towards Alice Springs and was about the same height as a small aircraft. The condition of the sky was clear and no wind. No sound was heard from the UFO, which was larger than the full moon, 12 o'clock high, and moved faster than any aircraft. Respondent reports sighting up to 12 illuminated triangular or stealth-type aircraft travelling overhead. The intensely bright triangular illuminations travelled in a tight V formation. After a few minutes, the illuminations descended and seemed to disappear into the sea. The respondent claimed that 10 minutes later, a loud and noisy ALWAC, airborne early warning type of aircraft, with a large round disc on top of it, flew into the area on the same course and heading as the 12 illuminations, and it also disappeared. Following this event, a heavy-duty military-type helicopter with 2 large spotlights combed the area and seemed to be taking an interest in the Umea Beach area, the Gosford side of Pittwater. A large or light aircraft also came into view as the helicopter headed over toward the area where the 12 illuminations disappeared. Both aircraft continued and passed the area where the other aircraft disappeared until they were out of sight near the Palm Beach district. What is interesting about these reports are that it is likely that the witnesses saw secret man-made aircraft flying around the night skies which no one in the authority wants to admit to. We would suggest that if you see anything which you are not sure of in the Victorian skies, then phone 190-224-3529 and contact Ross Dow, National UFO Hotline. Also, in July 1997, there will be a UFO alien abduction conference here in Melbourne called Contact 97. Keep watching Top Secret TV for more details. That's all for me. See you next time.
That's all we have time for this week. Next week's show, we check out how rebalancing the discordant notes in your voice by listening to carefully chosen sounds can improve your health. We also look at a local inventor who will be talking about cars that run on water. So that's next week. We hope you'll join us then, and until then, good night.
I'll just go to file, select all, because this